It's been a couple months since I've shared what we've been reading in our homeschool, so I thought this would be a great chance to sit down and have a chat and share with you what we've been reading. Read alouds are a big part of our homeschool. We have 5 children between the ages of 7 and 16 right now, so that's grades 2 and grade 11. And we do read alouds all together. I try and find books that are kind of varying, some more for older kids, some for younger kids, some classics, something that goes with our history or our science or maybe our geography. So I try to mix it up. We do some audiobooks and some books that I actually read. So this is, I think it's been about 2 months since I shared our last update. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in and share with you which ones we read. The very first book we did was The Far, Far North. Now, this is an interesting book. It's about a polar bear and about friends that he makes while living in the far, far north and just kind of little adventures that they go on. My younger kids gave this book, I think, a 4 and a 5. My older kids did not really like the book, and I was kind of the same. I gave the book, I think I gave it like 2 stars. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. I felt like there was a few good messages in there and a few interesting things, but it was confusing, like a polar bear who and the other creatures like bake cupcakes and talk to humans, but then they live underground and or they live in the woods, and I don't know, it was such a mix of like fantasy and real without a lot of meat to it, I felt like. And I know some people are probably not going to agree with my review of it because it's a very popular book, but it just wasn't a big hit for us. But again, the younger kids did like it. So I don't know. I gave it 2 stars. They gave it more. I guess it depends who you ask. Then we moved on to this book here, The Bedouin's Giselle. This is by Frances Temple. This went along with our Story of the World that we did. It's quite a short book. It's about 150 pages, and this is what it looks like inside. It was an interesting book. It kind of gave some explanation of what life is like in that part of the world at that part of the time and kind of culturally, but it was just bizarre. None of us really liked it very much. It was slow to start. It was a little hard to follow. Yeah. So I think we gave it a 2 overall. Again, I was so disappointed because it was supposed to be exciting, and it says on the back, they were pledged in marriage, these two, when they were babies. Now she's been sent away and a political pawn in a war between the Bedouin tribes in the year 1302. He vows to return to her as soon as he can. But that's not quite what happens in the story, so yeah, this one was just kind of a letdown. So the next one is Blackie the Crow. This is by Thornton W. Burgess, and this is by Charlotte Mason. It's a living book, and it says, one day Blackie notices 2 fresh eggs in a nest belonging to Hootie the Owl and Mrs. Hootie. The eggs are a prize too delicious to pass up, and Blackie devises a plan to snatch them. I'll show you what it looks like inside. I have a feeling this is a book that they reprinted. Let me see if it says in here. It says Little Brown and Company. Because there were some spelling mistakes in it, which was surprising. So we chose this book, or I chose it, because it went along with our bird unit that my youngest children are doing for science this year. It is a living book, which I do like living books. Some of the book was a little bit slow. Other parts were funny. And it definitely introduces crows and owls and gives some information about them. But it was also a little bizarre too. I don't know. I've read some of his other works and they've been okay, but this one seemed a little bizarre to me. I don't know. I like some of it. My kids like some of it. Wasn't a huge fan of other parts of it, so kind of a mixed bag. Ended up giving it 3 stars. The next book that we did was an audiobook, and it's $14.93 for young people by Charles C. Mann. And this was a book which one of my teenagers was doing for their Whirlwind History by Guess Hollow this year. And when I went to look for it for him, I thought, you know what, this kind of goes along with where we are in history with the younger kids, as well as we're doing geography, all of us, of South America right now, and kind of the history there as well. And so I thought, let's just listen to this all together. Sometimes it's nice to change up and to have some audiobooks as well. It gives me a break, and it just gives the kids a break from hearing me read all the time too. So it was an interesting book. It's a longer one. It's definitely more academic based. It's not like dry facts. There's stories and they're intertwining the Columbia Exchange and the exchange of goods and people and food and viruses and kind of how the world was not isolated anymore. And it was really fascinating to listen to. But yeah, it's definitely more for teenagers and probably preteens, maybe, if they're really interested in that. For my younger kids, it was kind of over their heads, a lot of it. But it did have a great value to it and a lot of information in it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. My kids, again, the younger ones gave less, the older ones gave like 4 or 5. Some of them really did enjoy it. And it was just interesting to hear how, like the potato, and the impact of how it came to be in corn and how corn was cultivated, because originally it was not like what it is today. So, in that respect, it was an interesting book. Then we moved on to this book here, A Loyal Foe by Ivy Mae Bolton. This book went along with our Story of the World, as well as my child who is doing Whirlwind History. His almost perfectly lined up with us. And it's about the War of the Roses, which it's a period of time that I really didn't understand a whole lot about this white rose, red rose. And I mean, I've gone through Story of the World, I've gone through my own history, through school and university, and I just didn't really understand it very much. And this book cleared that up for me. I understood so much more after we read this book. It's a level 12 from The Good and the Beautiful. So if you're familiar with their levels, it is like the highest rating that they have. So it is a more difficult book to read, and it's a little bit confusing. There's a few terms that are just kind of confusing. I'll show you what it looks like inside. But it's not as difficult to read as I feel some of the other books, even like their 9s or 10s have been. So in that respect, it was okay. But it talks about, I can't explain it all between the two different houses and who's supposed to be king, and they're fighting. And then I never really understood the mystery of what happened to the prince and to his brother. And so this really explained it. It is sad. It does deal with death. So be prepared if you have younger children. Mine were fine with it. But this is one that I really did like. So I think I wrote down here, I gave it 4 stars. You guys, my chickens and roosters are always making noises when I want to film. Yeah, I gave it 4 just because it still was a little bit difficult to understand, but I would highly recommend that book if you want to understand more about that time frame and what's going on in more of a story format, because sometimes, especially when the names are similar, I have a hard time keeping track of the royal family and who's overthrowing who. So that's a book I would recommend. Next, we did Good Masters, Sweet Ladies, which is a book I have seen all throughout the homeschool community for many years. I had taken it out from the library last time we did the medieval time period in history, and I kind of had a quick look through it then and thought, oh no, this isn't going to work. But this time I had a better look and I thought, well, maybe this will work this time. And, everyone says it's so great, and so we went ahead and read it, and no. Someone's going to be really upset with me, but I would say like 1 star. It's just so crude and gross and disgusting, and I know part of that could be true for the Middle Ages, but I felt like it was just overkill and it just was confusing, and I just didn't feel like it brought value to our homeschool, so that was just a no-go for us. That only got 1 star, and that's because that's the lowest I can give it. And that brings us to the book we just finished, which is this one here, Ponies for a King. This is by Helen B. Walters. It's from the Good and the Beautiful library as well. It's a level 5. As you can see, it's very short. There are, 65 pages in it, and there are some sketches in it as well. So there's a few pictures. It's a book about 2 families that are feuding, and one of the sons is being sent to take care of the ponies in the pasture. And this is his first year, and he's being reminded, don't talk to the other people, don't interact with them. We don't want to be blamed if something goes wrong with their ponies. They both raise ponies that hopefully the king is going to choose, hence the name, Ponies for a King. And something happens and the boy has to make a decision what to do. So the book does have good morals in it. It, even though it's a shorter book and it's a simple story, it's a little bit slower. It does talk about, though, friendship, forgiveness, unity, being kind, helping your neighbor. So it's a good book for that. If you have children who are interested in like ponies or that time period, they might be interested in this. It's definitely for younger kids though. I ended up giving it a 3 just because I felt like it was a little slow. It maybe could have had a little bit more to it, but some of my younger kids did enjoy it quite a bit. I don't have any books from my kids that they want to recommend at this time, but I did want to share 2 with you that I recently read, well, actually listened to on Audible, and that I really enjoyed and I'm hoping to do as a read aloud at some point in the future. The first one is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. You know, this is just one of those books where I, for a long time, felt like it just doesn't sound interesting to me. It's just not my thing. I'm not interested in it. But I listened to it and it took a little while to get into it, but then I really liked it. Like I really enjoyed the book and I can see the appeal now for young people. So I'm hoping to do that as a read aloud at some point. I think I gave this book a 5 on my Goodreads rating. And then I went and listened to Little Men by Louisa May Alcott. And I love this book even more. This one is definitely a 5. I think there's just so much fun in it. Children being children, but also being able to explore and get educated and experience things. And just a really fun book, which I never thought I would say that about that book. But I really enjoyed it. So those are 2 books I'm hoping to do as read-alouds at some point in the future. So if you're looking for read-alouds, those may work for you. Both stories, the kids get into mischief, but particularly little men. So if you have little ones, they might enjoy this book too, all the things and the trouble that they get into. So that's what we've been reading. Hopefully that gives you some ideas of read-alouds or maybe ones to avoid. I don't know. Let me know if you've read any of these books in the comments section down below and what you thought of them. Also, what you're reading right now, because I love to get suggestions. Otherwise, I hope that this finds you having a great day. Take care.